So on the module 8C, being the stakeholders engagement for investment projects module that we are dealing with, we would go straight to the next subtopic that we have been talking about, which is consultation and participation. Okay, consultation and participation. I have 3 bullet points I want to discuss in this subtopic, which is informed consultation and participation, indigenous people, private sector responsibilities under government-led stakeholder engagement. Okay, you know, private sector, of course, have their responsibilities, where state engagement is places where, or scenarios where stakeholders engagement is the responsibility of the host government, you know. So, but first, let's take from the informed consultation, and then we discuss it and go down through this. So we're using the IFC Performance Standards document 2012 for this webinar. So that's a good reference document for you to find and probably have more robust information for you there. So when affected communities are subject to identified risks and impacts from a project, the proponent will undertake a process of consultation in a manner that provides the affected communities with opportunities to express their views on project risk freely, express their views on the impacts that have been communicated to them, like I discussed with us in the module 8B, which has to do with disclosure and dissemination of information. So all of this information disclosed to the communities, they have to be free to express their views on the risks, impact mitigation measures, and also allow the proponent to consider and respond to the views of the community. So the extent and degree of the engagement required by the consultation process has to be commensurate with the project's risks and adverse impacts. That means the higher the risks, the higher the level of consultations that has to be embarked upon for the projects. And of course, most importantly, with the concerns raised by the affected communities. So there are local concerns, most especially in rural communities, have to be addressed in a systematic way, you know, in a step-by-step manner, and ensure that all of the information they require or they need or clarifications needed are provided timeously and are disclosed in a manner that does not keep information away from the communities. So effective consultation is actually, in most cases, a two-way process, which should begin early in the process of identification of the risks or the impact, and it has to continue on. It has to be on an ongoing basis as the risks and the impacts begin to show up in the during the execution of the project. So it has to be based on the prior disclosure and dissemination of relevant, transparent, objective information, which is in the appropriate language that they understood. Like I mentioned in the past webinar, it has to be translated to the local people's language. So, and also effective consultation has to also be focus inclusive, you know, such as women, the elderly, the youth, the displaced people, of course, men inclusive, and the vulnerable and disadvantaged persons or groups. So the engagements on those directly affected as opposed to those not directly affected has to also be, it has to be focused on the people, not just engagements randomly, you know. We have project interested persons, but when talking about project affected persons, we have to really be focused on the affected persons and not just people interested, not because they are affected or impacted by the project. So the process has to be free of external manipulations, interferences, or intimidation, you know, and it has to enable meaningful participation where, you know, where applicable. And in most cases, it has to be documented. Like you can have your minutes of meetings, you know, during your consultation processes. Everything said by everybody has to be captured in a systematic manner, in, you know, documented for future review. So the proponents will tailor the consultation, of course, to the language of the preferred language, and ensure that their decision-making process and the needs of disadvantaged groups are also captured. So the informed consultation and participation for projects with potentially significant impact on communities will be conducted, in form of what called the informed consultation and participation process. It will build upon the steps outlined in my introduction in the consultation process and will result in the affected communities being properly informed. So the informed consultation process, being ICP, involves more in-depth exchange of views and information and an organized and iterative consultation, leading to the clients incorporating into their decision-making the process and views of the affected communities. Okay, the process, like I said, will capture men, women, and reflect the different concerns and priorities of these different groups. Okay, so looking at the indigenous people, for projects with adverse impacts to indigenous people, the proponents have to engage them in a process of the ICP, that's the informed consultation and participation. And in certain circumstances, the proponent is required to obtain their free, prior, and informed consent. You know what I mean, FPIC. So, and the requirements related to indigenous people and the definition of their special circumstances are captured in full in Performance Standard 7, which we will look into later on. Okay, so the private sector, like I said in my introduction, under the government-led stakeholder engagement, is basically where stakeholder engagement is the responsibility of the host community, of the host government. So the proponents will have to collaborate with the responsible government agency to the extent permitted by the agency to ensure that the engagement is done in a process where government capacity is available. But where it is limited, the proponents have to play a major and active role during the stakeholder engagement planning, implementation, and monitoring to be sure that the right thing is done and properly presented in a document that is scalable and that can be reviewed with information availability. I hope this module and the topic is useful for you. Please do subscribe to our channel so that we can bring you more as we go on.